Hello, once again, to all our listeners, and welcome to another episode of Geeked Out. My name is Kyle,
And Juan.
and this week we continue to look into alternative comic book movies as we went back to 2012 and we watched Dredd. This movie stars Carl Urban, Olivia Thirlby, Lena Headey, Wood Harris, and Domhnall Gleeson, who pops up in the movie. It was directed by Pete Travis, and it has a 7.1 out of 10 rating on IMDb, with a critic score of 80% and an audience score of 72% on Rotten Tomatoes. Now, before we get into this, as always, I'm going to ask you, where did you first see this movie? When did you see it? How, if you remember? Those specifics, at least.
Pretty sure I seen it in the theater.
Okay.
I remember the 3D scenes. I remember experiencing the 3D during those scenes. So it had to have been at the theater.
Okay. Yeah, that was something I did come across as I was kind of doing some research about this film, is that almost the entire film, if not the entire film, was shot with 3D cameras. And from everything that I've read or heard about those, that does not seem like a fun experience, because everything I've heard about those is they are these gigantic things that the crew would have had to deal with, and I don't think that would have been very enjoyable. Um, Now, just like what we watched last week, this was my first viewing of this film. I had never seen it before. However, I knew of its existence. I have a good friend who was really high on this movie when it came out, and he's raved about it many times over the years. And I never watched it. Never really had the urge to see it. It looked okay. I never watched it, and I don't really remember if I've actually seen Judge Dredd, the Stallone one. I want to say I have, but I could remember absolutely nothing about it, so I might not have seen it. Um,
I
which
remember like certain elements of that movie. I remember liking it though.
I remember thinking that when that movie, I do remember when that movie came out, because I remember seeing like trailers and things like that on TV, and I just remember seeing the way his character looked, with the helmet and the whole getup, and I just thought it looked really cool. And I do think that that does translate over to this film. I do like the look of the helmet and things like that. I will say though, I was not a very big fan of this movie. I went into it expecting that.
Ooh.
I feel like I'm going to get that kind of. I think hatred's the wrong word, but those feelings directed towards my critique of this movie. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know if I expected just to like it more, just from the trailers or from the what it was about, knowing what it was about, things like that. But again, like I also said to you off pod or off mic, sorry, is with my buddy talking about it through the years and telling me how good it is, and then you've been trying to get me to watch it for probably over a year now. I don't know if it was overhyped, or and then I expected too much out of it, because I mean, let's be honest, it's just a basic action movie. And that was one of my bigger critiques. I didn't think there was much of a plot, much of a script, much of anything of substance behind this movie. So I think that's one of my bigger critiques of it.
I think the I guess the plot is very very simple. I think there's still like a plot.
Is there though? I mean,
I mean, it's simple as hell. I
oh,
mean,
you're right. It's very simple.
guy with a rookie goes to investigate, and then shit happens.
But see, that's the thing. So I have a summary here that I kind of pieced together and wrote up a little bit. So I'll read that and we'll kind of go from there because this I looked up on Wikipedia and the whole description of the plot is quite long, and I just kind of
See? If it had no plot, there'd be no.
But it just to me, okay. So to me, it's just so basic. So basically, the movie is the movie takes place in a dystopian future in the year 2080, where most of the United States is a post-nuclear war wasteland. And on the East Coast lies Mega City 1, which is home to 800 million residents, where 17,000 serious crimes are reported daily, as said in the film.
God damn.
Now, in this city, the judges are the only ones trying to uphold order, and to do so, they're given the powers of judge, jury, and executioner. Judge Dredd is given the task to evaluate new rookie Anderson, a powerful psychic who they call a mutant in the movie, who is being tested on her aptitude to be a judge. They are called to one of the mega structures, a 200-story slum building, after reigning drug lord Mama has had 3 men skinned alive and thrown off an interior balcony. From there on is a cat and mouse game of thugs trying to find the judges, and the judges exacting their sentences on each criminal they come across. Now, when I kind of wrote that out, I was like, I had to almost like embellish it a little bit, because I can't just write, yeah, they got called there. There's a drug lord, the end. Because that's basically all it is. I mean, I had to try and...
For sure.
And yeah, it's... I mean, going into this movie, I will say I was very excited because Judge Dredd is played by Karl Urban, and I'm a huge, huge fan of Karl Urban. I don't think there's a movie... I'm not... Aside from before this movie, I don't think there was a movie that he was in that I didn't just absolutely love. That I can think of, anyways.
Well, I think he absolutely killed it in this role.
He does well, but there's not much to the role.
Because I think the character himself, there's not much. He's basically just a brooding, one-lining, just over-serious character. And I think that's exactly what Karl Urban was trying to capture.
See, you're probably right. And I guess it might hurt a little bit that I've never read this comic or this publication and have no real background on the character. Because, in doing some of the research, it says that this was a character that was originally developed and first appeared in a comic, or it's a... I believe it was a Great Britain character. Sorry, a character originated in a comic in Great Britain, and the comic was called 2000 AD, and his first appearance was in 1977. I had no idea this character had been around for that long.
Yeah, me neither.
Now, again, it did say that it took quite a long time for him to get his own actual comic, or I think they call them magazines in the UK, but he was first debuted in 1977, and I kind of went, okay, I didn't know any of that. The only history I had of the character was the Stallone movie, and I didn't even know until I started doing a little bit more research that he was a comic book character. I thought I had heard something like that, but I wasn't 100% sure.
I knew he was a comic book character, but that was after the Stallone movie, because I watched that one very young, probably around the time it came out.
Yeah, that movie came out in 95.
Yeah, I would have been like 8. So yeah, definitely, I definitely would have seen that with my father. It's one of those. I think my dad enjoyed that the Stallone version. I think it was one of the DVDs that he bought, so it was definitely in rotation.
Well, I was gonna say from what you've told me about your dad is, I know you said before that he loved things like '80s action movies and whatnot, and with Stallone being a huge star of those movies, it makes a lot of sense that he would have wanted to see most Stallone films.
Yeah, and like
Uh,
the '90s Dredd movie almost is a lot like in a way. You can compare it to Demolition Man, but Demolition Man
is better.
only because of the it's because what Wesley Snipes brings to the to that movie as well. Judge Dredd didn't have and it did have a villain, but that it was weak. It was super weak compared to a Wesley Snipes.
Okay, I'm really glad you didn't say compared to Lena Headey in this movie because she is almost non-existent for most of this film.
Yeah, I mean, she didn't have a lot to work with. She was like generic, crazy woman, king, queen pin.
But
But
most of what she does in this movie is just glare.
there's a lot of glaring
I
and a
mean,
lot just orders. Um, but I was fine with it. It didn't stick out as a bad performance. Just I know I've seen her do better, obviously.
yeah, and I don't think the script gave. I, again, I think that it boils down to the script of this movie. I don't think the script gave her or any other character really enough to do.
Well, I mean, yeah. I mean, the movie is about 90 minutes, a little over. So,
Yeah,
it
I wanted to ask you, where did you watch this? Because I watched this on Amazon Prime.
when I rewatched it on
Yeah,
Amazon,
yeah.
yeah, it was Amazon Prime, but I
So
originally
the funniest thing is, I pulled the movie up, and I had looked at it before on IMDb, things like that, and everything I found would say it's like, oh, an hour and 38 minutes, an hour and 30, whatever the runtime was. I pull it up on Amazon Prime, and on the screen it shows that it's 2 hours and 15 minutes. I went, what fucking cut am I watching? Is there a director's cut that I don't know about of this movie? But then as soon as I turn it on, the little ticker at the bottom of the screen says an hour 35, and I just felt myself exhale. Like,
maybe
once the
that's
mo-
maybe that's Judge Dredd. Sometimes they get their shit mixed up.
that's what I was gonna say. If they've switched the runtime, because once it actually started playing, it had the right runtime. But on the screen, it said 2 hours 15, and once it started, I went, please don't let this be a 2 hour long movie.
That would have been good. I think that would have been a good enough time to get the things that you wanted out of this movie, which was, yes, but more fleshed out.
So my whole thing with this movie is I really like the start. I really like the voiceover that Carl Urban does as you kind of see him. It kind of gives like a bird's eye view of the destroyed city and the kind of state of things, and it's also kind of bouncing back and forth between that as well as him kind of getting in his uniform and things like that. And I enjoyed that. I liked the opening car chase where I think it's him, where he's chasing the three guys who are on the drug of the movie. It's called SLO-MO, which is a really interesting concept. I really dislike how much they used it, but I will come back to that later.
Oh, there's a
And it's basically a drug that when the user inhales it, I think it says that it makes your brain think that time is passing at 1% of the actual speed. So obviously everything they experience is in slow motion. And so the opening car chase where he basically crashes their car and kills them, I liked. I didn't mind her introduction, the whole thing, but once him and Anderson get called to the building, I found it so boring. for a good 30 minutes or so. That's where I think the weakness of this movie lies. I didn't, like I say, I didn't mind the opening. I liked the ending. It was the whole middle section, the whole second act of the movie, I thought was really meandering and not hard to follow, but for me, it was almost like it was hard for me to want to follow it.
I just look at it like they got trapped in a survival game. It's almost like a survival thing.
Yeah, I can understand that point of view.
I mean, that's why I didn't really get, and I don't view it as boring. I never was bored watching this movie, and that's probably why is because the way the way I view it was, I guess, during the second act is more of a survival movie.
Okay, I hadn't thought of it in that way, but it does make sense.
I mean, you have your opinions of it, which is that's fine. I just thought you would have liked it a little bit more.
I mean, I going into it, I thought I was really going to enjoy it, and then it just once they get in there and they kind of they pull the whole lockdown thing, and basically every window is covered by a steel shutter, and the whole opening at the top is closed. I just once it gets to that point, and then it's just Dredd and Anderson just kind of sneaking around corners, and then the thugs that, or the cronies, whatever you want to call them, that are working for Lena Headey's character, they're searching the building for them. It just, that to me was a little bit, it was a little boring, and I think a lot of it has to do with there was no, number one, there was no real action. I mean, there was a little bit here and there, but not what I was hoping or expecting. And when there was no action, there was also no real dialogue. So it was just kind of tense music and looking around corners. And to me, it was just kind of like, oh, okay. There was honestly a point in this movie I kind of dozed off, if I'm being completely honest.
I got none of that. I got none of that watching it. I think the dialogue was drew you in or anything. No. Um, but given the situation, it was one of the officers' first day, so you're still, I guess a lot of the movie was through her perspective and her point of view, almost like we're following along with her character, even though get scenes with Dredd by himself.
I was gonna say, yeah, because she gets, like, for lack of a better term, she gets basically kidnapped halfway through.
Yeah, but
and then she's gone from until later in the movie.
Yeah. So yeah, there's not a whole lot of dialogue when it's just Dredd alone, because he's a very quiet character. He's like Mr. One-liner. So I could agree at that point. But whenever it was Dredd and the officer, the rookie
Anderson.
Um, I thought the dialogue was, I guess, okay for what it was.
I mean,
for an action movie, I'm not looking for, a whole lot of complex back and forth and
no, not at all. Because I mean,
out of an action movie.
dialogue's
But
not written that way for an action movie.
And I was satisfied. I was okay with it.
I will say there were some things that I did like about their interactions with one another. Specifically when they're about to um, when they're about to go on the call, basically, and he says, "This is your evaluation," and he kind of goes through, if you do this wrong, you fail. If you do this wrong, you fail. You lose your weapon, you fail. If you any about this, and he's just going through all of it, and then you find you found out earlier before this that she is like I said before, they call her a mutant, which is never really brought up again. But she has psychic abilities, so she can read people's thoughts, um, things like that. And he says to her, he asks her about a helmet, why she's not wearing a helmet. And she says, well, it interferes with my psychic abilities. It makes it harder for me to read people. And he says, so will a bullet. And I kind of chuckled at that because it's that's probably one of the few one-liners that I really was like I really got behind.
Oh, there's at least 2, 3 more.
Please don't talk about when he's talking to his gun.
No. Oh, beginning, that the hot shot was pretty sweet, but no, there's one where he's in a fight, and yeah, he lays a pretty good one-liner.
I don't know. I don't feel I don't want to feel like I'm picking on this movie because I didn't hate it. Like I wouldn't say it's one of the worst things I've ever watched. I think I was just expecting more or expecting maybe too much from it. Um,
I get it. I mean, but I know that going into the movie that it was on a budget, and it definitely, production wise, it definitely feels like it has a tight budget. They didn't want too much money, which
I
is
don't
part of.
know how. I don't know how. I don't know where their budget went because it had a budget of 50 million.
Well, yeah, I mean the effects, the slow-mo was a decent
Yeah,
amount.
that's true.
Um, some of the action scenes, I guess, required some decent CG.
Because it had a budget of 50 million, and this is why I think this has become more of a cult classic over the years, as opposed to because it wasn't from these numbers, it was not um, a smash success in theaters. So, like I
Now,
said,
I
I'm
have
sorry.
two I have two theories why it did not. It basically bombed.
Okay,
One, you could blame your boy Sly Stallone with that terrible Judge Dredd movie. It left a pretty bad stink on it. Um, I don't think I could add this is, I guess, an extra added theory. I don't think the marketing was too strong as well. And also, there's another movie that came out months either before or after that had the exact same plot,
what movie is that?
called The Raid Redemption.
I
It's
don't
an,
think I know that one.
I believe it's Indonesian uh, martial arts movie. It's one of the best martial art movies in the last 20 years. It's like it's the next evolution of how they film or choreograph fight scenes because it's as real as you're gonna get. It's brutal. You need to watch it. But the plot of that movie is basically they get trapped in an apartment building run by drug lord, and these guys are trying to, the drug lord hires or forces the residents and henchmen to track down the cops and kill them. Basically the same plot.
So they just took that and basically inserted
I don't know if
the
they
comic
took it
character.
because one came out months, I think.
Oh, I get what you're saying. So it could just be a real unfortunate coincidence for this movie.
Exactly.
Okay. Yeah, because like I said, this movie had a budget of $50 million, and it only brought in a worldwide gross of just over 41 million. So it lost close to 9 million just on that, and it was only just over 6 million domestic opening weekend. Now, those don't seem like great numbers, and yet you look at like what I had found for the ratings on IMDb and Rotten Tomatoes, this film is rated decently, I mean, above average, I would say. So clearly, there was some people, and most people, came to this movie after it had left theaters, which happens all the time. I mean, I'm not saying that that's if a movie fails in theaters that it's a complete failure overall or that it's not a good movie. It's just like you said. I'm sure there were factors, and as soon as you said that the marketing might have been a factor, I think you might be partially right on that because I remember seeing ads and things like that for this, but not like you would normally see. Like if you had a movie in 2012, like for example, any of obviously the Dark Knight trilogy, things like that are the first things that come to my mind for that time period. Those were marketed out the ass. But again, that's a big comic studio. That's I forget actually the studio it was that made that movie. Well, I think whether it was Fox or Universal. But yeah, this one wasn't. I don't like. I think you're right. I don't think it was marketed the way it probably should have been or could have been.
No. But yeah, I think if given the proper amount of marketing, it would have done at least enough to warrant a sequel. But we'll never get that, unfortunately.
Probably not. No. Now you brought up the whole hotshot thing.
Yeah, yeah.
I really thought that was strange. Not necessarily that one line. And I get that the movie takes place in the future, but I wasn't a big fan of it. The way that he just kind of talks to his gun and tells it what to fire, and like, I thought that was a little odd.
Now he changes the bullets, man.
Yeah,
How else is he supposed to do it?
you don't. You just shoot bullets because you see him. You see later he just when he just takes a regular clip and loads it into the gun. So they're just regular bullets that are somehow this gun is transforming them, and all he has to do is he says things like incendiary or what, and all of a sudden the bullet does whatever, it becomes whatever he needs it to be.
Yeah.
I get that it's a futuristic thing and kind of like a sci-fi element to the movie, but I just thought it was really weird.
Don't you make fun of that gun, man. That gun is an icon, bro.
Oh, the gun looks fucking sweet, but just the way he's like, and the way they film it is it's almost like he's whispering, like he's talking to a lover or a long lost friend. It made me chuckle. I will say that because he's got it like with um, he's got it pressed almost right against his lip as he goes to say it. Not all the time, but specifically at one point when he's kind of like crouched behind a wall and he kind of just puts it to his mouth and he's like incendiary.
I did not get that. I didn't notice that at all. He was just saying it.
I mean, I did. Now, what did you? I'll ask you. I already mentioned her character and the glares. What did you think of Lena Headey's performance?
It was fine. Like I said, it wasn't, the writing didn't lend her any favors. It wasn't a complex character, it was straightforward comic book bad guy. And I accepted it, It is based off a comic book. So I would, assume a lot of the villains are pretty comic booky evil. Which that's what it seemed like.
Uh, I like Lena Headey personally. I mean, I've seen quite a few things with her, and I enjoy her as an actress for the most part. I don't necessarily think that she was much of a villain at all. I mean, yeah, in the beginning she has them, and that scene's brutal. Like after they skin the three guys, when you see them kind of hit the floor,
Yeah.
that part is brutal. But I mean, after that, she really doesn't do a whole lot. I mean, the most of her character for the rest of the movie that I noticed up until the final
Yeah,
confrontation.
she was like a strung out. She was strung out evil villain. She wasn't.
There,
She wasn't really, she wasn't clear headed, obviously, and she wasn't really too physical and non-threatening when she's just by herself, not with her henchmen. But yeah,
no,
she's strung out, druggy, but she's also a queen pin.
I will say that a lot of the movie, she almost felt like a secondary character when it was Domhnall Gleeson plays just some tech genius, I guess, with I guess robotic eyes. They keep showing his pupils kind of like zooming and dilating and in a very unnatural way, I guess is the best way to describe it. But she's constantly just kind of leaning over his shoulder as they're looking at surveillance tapes, and then they try to make her seem really menacing when they show, like, it's like a montage of her, what she's done to people. Like a couple of the scenes of her is her gouging people's eyes out with her bare hands, which, don't get me wrong, that is brutal. But I would have liked, and I think the way you mentioned earlier, I would have liked to see her character fleshed out just a little bit more, and maybe taken one or two of those scenes and not done it in a montage, but kind of shown it within a little bit of context, as opposed to just, yep, this is what she did. You have no idea why or anything like that. Because the way they portray this future is, it is brutal. Like, these judges can basically sentence somebody to death for almost anything, it seems like.
Yeah. I mean, they have to abide by the rules, but if the rules allow them to take you out of the game, then yeah, they can do it without any
Repercussion.
yeah.
It's almost like they enjoy it.
Well, yeah,
Like,
yeah.
you can
That's
almost hear us, almost like a smirk when he says, like, when they say, like, your sentence is death.
yeah, I mean not Anderson. She was very hesitant on killing somebody until she, had absolutely no choice. Um the other judges that you see, it makes sense why they were so gleeful killing. And Judge Dredd is a fucking psychopath, so
Yeah, that's kind of how he's portrayed.
no, he's like a hard anti-villain. He's like a Punisher. Just like the Punisher gets a little smirk on his face whenever he's taking out, mobsters. It is the same thing.
I get what you're saying.
He's not trying to kill, you know, uh, if you're doing something that's absolutely not worthy of it, but if it's worthy of it, oh yeah, he's going to take you out for sure.
Yeah.
It's his first option.
Another thing I did like about the guns that they use is, was it DNA? I forget, I can't remember. Was it DNA or their handprint to make sure that only they could fire the weapon?
It's DNA.
That's what I thought. Um,
Yeah, that
because
was
that
part of the plot. That was part of the main plot of the original Dredd movie.
Okay, because I always like that when they do that. I mean, I know they've done that in a couple different James Bond movies where the gun will only fire to, like, his handprint,
Hmm.
and it's one of those tropes that gets set up in the beginning of, they do it so where you as the watcher know that only they can fire that weapon. So you know that at one point you're going to get somebody who's not um, registered on that gun to use it, and you're going to get to see the repercussion.
I mean, they didn't. Did they even hint at that in this movie?
They didn't, but I think,
But this movie almost expects you to have seen the Sly version because I knew that going in because that there's again it's part of the plot of that movie that yeah it only works with the person who is assigned to.
but see, like I say, I don't even remember if I've seen that movie, or if I did, I don't remember any of it. But I've seen that trope in other action movies or other movies. So I think it's something that's been done more than once, and again, like you say, they kind of expected you to figure that out. Like, because if that's not the reason, why would they be showing that it's registering the user's DNA? You know what I mean?
Yeah, I didn't think about it like that, but because I already knew. But yeah.
So I'm going to bring up another character in this, and it's Wood Harris. Now, again, Wood Harris is a very good actor. He's been in many things. I've still never finished The Wire, but I know that he is in that show. But every time he's on screen, it doesn't matter if it's a movie, if it's a TV show, anything like that. So in this movie, he plays a character named Kay. But the minute he popped on screen, I just went, "Oh, it's Julius!" Because every single time he's on screen, to me, he is just Julius from Remember the Titans.
My God, if he took a terrible turn,
Hey,
he was a good man in that movie. We talking about?
hey, he dealt with his friend getting paralyzed. All right, people do
Yeah.
bad. People do bad shit.
We decided to. Okay, I'm a villain now.
But every time he's one of those actors that he's kind of a, I wouldn't say a nobody, but he's someone that not everybody would recognize immediately, and if they do, they
He's
recognize him from that.
in that category of actors that you know, but you don't know. You know what I'm saying? He's in that realm. Well, you've seen him in so many movies. You really can't name the movie, and you definitely don't know the name, but you know that you've seen this motherfucker in at
He's
least 25 movies.
well,
There's so
they're
many different actors like that where I've seen this guy. But you on the spot you can't even think of the movie.
well. It's funny. There are two different podcasts that I listen to that they both have a separate category where they always try and find a character in the movie that they're watching, and they both refer to it as a That Guy Award.
Yeah, there's a lot of that guys.
And yeah, I absolutely. And it's funny because both of those two podcasts have them named after a different actor, and I always chuckle um, every time I hear them say it. But yeah, Wood Harris is definitely that. But like I say, for me, he will always be Julius from Remember the Titans.
Yeah. So
And so again, knowing him from that movie where he's such a good character and a good person, and then you see him in something like this or in The Wire, and he's portraying such a villain. And now he is the one who we were bringing up the gun only firing for the DNA. He's the one that comes back to bite him in the ass on, and it's kind of a brutal scene because it's not just the gun doesn't fire, the gun fucking blows up along with his entire forearm.
I think the entire movie, anytime there was action, that it was just brutal, man. Like people are getting set on fire, blown up. It's gory, man. This
Oh,
act
100%.
gory.
And you know what? The I wouldn't say the worst in terms of like when I say worst, I don't mean like worst as in bad, but like worst as in most brutal. I think for me there was no real blood or gore at all, and it's when Stallone throat punch or not. Oh my god, I said Stallone, didn't I?
Yeah.
It's I might if I've done that already on this pod, I'm sorry, but it's when Carl Urban fucking throat punches the one guy, and you actually see his larynx and his esophagus like caved in.
Yeah. And what do you say after that?
I don't even remember.
Saying choke on this.
Yes, that's because the guy said that to him before that.
Yeah. Yeah. That still counts as a one-liner.
I guess.
It was tight.
But yeah, that to me was the most brutal. It wasn't any of the blood or anything like that. The most
Really?
brutal was to see that, like
The
the
mo
skin dented in.
I think that one of the most brutal ones I've seen was the slow-mo shot of the guy getting shot in his face and his fucking cheek
Oh
exploded.
yes.
You can see his teeth.
Well, because they did it, so they showed that shot where the camera's in front of him, and then as the bullet goes through, then they showed from the side view of the bullet coming out,
Yeah.
and yeah, you see his whole cheek like exploding, and that was pretty brutal.
Yeah, man. I mean, I thought the action was well throughout the movie, even though you thought it wasn't. Um,
Well, I will say I really enjoyed the action when it was happening. It was those down
yeah,
moments in between.
and when it was, yeah, and when it was on screen, it was nothing short of just brutal, like soup, like just gory, man, brutal.
I will say I had a thought more than once during this movie that I just kind of was going, did Zack fucking Snyder direct this? The amount of slow motion used in this movie. I,
I think, honestly, I think part of the reason was why is because I think the movie was shot with 3D cameras, so that those slow mo.
it helps.
I guess it was to a- add to the experience of the 3D.
That makes sense. It just I feel
Because
that
because
I feel
there's
that 3D in a movie is one of those things that it's so much of less is more. And I feel that they overused it way too much.
yeah, the only time it ever worked was Avatar. I think that was the only time it's ever really worked.
Okay, gonna drop a bombshell. Never seen Avatar
Damn. I mean, it's not. It was only worth watching in the theaters in
for the
3D.
effects.
Yeah. Other than that, it's very basic plot. It's good. It's okay.
Well, that's the joke that I've made since that movie came out. Is I know what the plot is, and every time people, oh, you've got it. How have you ever seen Avatar? And I go, well, I have seen it, but when I saw it, it was called Dances with Wolves, The Last
But
Samurai, Pocahontas,
Fern Gully.
Fern Gully.
But exactly. It's all those movies have the same plot. This one's the same. It's fine. It's great to look at, and the action's decent. It's okay. I'd give like an Avatar, honestly, like probably it's a solid 7.
I'm sure that one of these days I will see it, but it's just not something that
No.
really gets me excited. The
Nobody no
idea of
nobody recommends somebody to go watch Avatar.
I guess that's very true.
Right? I've never seen it. I've never seen anybody recommend it.
Now, I do want to bring this up again. So I mentioned it before. Did you find that a little strange that they didn't give any backstory whatsoever when they referred to Anderson's character as a psychic or as a mutant? I'm sorry.
Sure. I mean, a little explanation
I would have taken anything
would have been good, or
because all you know is this is the future, and they're like, yeah, she's a
yeah,
mutant.
at least a little bit more time outside of the peach trees. Give us a little bit time to know what these characters are about. Explain yourself before we get to peach trees and when the shit really pops off.
And you know what? I think the big thing with that is as you're watching it, you're like, yeah, I don't care what the backstory of a guy like Judge Dredd is, and
Not really.
but you
Not
want it. But I felt like I wanted to know what her backstory was, and I think that a big factor with that is the helmet because he's wearing a helmet, so you don't have to see his face, so he could be whoever the fuck you want him to be. But because you see her face, there's that innate want to know who she is and what her story is, where she came from. And then they drop a random line like, "Oh, she's just a mutant." I'm like, "Wait, what? What the fuck did you just say?"
Well, I think part of it is because a lot of this movie where she's used as like, like basically we're following her.
No, I get that.
So it's through her perspective, and it's really, going through everything through her point of view, and you know, I think that would definitely lend to you wanting to know more about this character because it kind of focused on her a little bit more. That's
Yeah,
at
and I mean
majority of
they could have added it could have been 5 minutes, just a quick little background of who she is, where she's come from. I'm not asking for 30, 40 minutes. I just give that little background.
yeah, that would have, I would have added to it. I get to the story. I guess they just wanted to rush you right to the action or right to the main plot of the movie.
Yeah,
The
I
main,
think that was part of it
or at
too.
least the main set piece of the movie, because there wasn't many set designs in this movie,
No, there really wasn't.
which led to its budget being.
Yeah, they were like you said, they really blew their wad on the 3D and the slow-mo and whatnot.
Mhm.
Uh, so as we get about just over halfway, probably through the movie, 3/4 through the movie, Lena Headey is really trying to figure out how to get rid of these judges once and for all. And this was the only line that she really had that I kind of had to smirk a bit. Is they're like, "How do we do this?" And she just kind of goes, "Well, we call 911." So upon that happening, these four other judges show up who immediately you find out are dirty. And she's basically hired them like they're mercenaries, and they're going to carry out this mission now of finding Judge Dredd because they have Anderson kind of held captive.
Yeah, yeah, they show that they were the dirty cops by killing like the one dude that I was like, damn, I hope he don't die. Shut the fuck
Yeah,
up.
he just kind of comes out. He's like, "Yeah, I know exactly what's going on, and I hear gunfire, so one of the judges must still be alive." And it's like, "Cool, Pop, you're dead."
I was like, damn. All right, whatever. These motherfuckers deserve to die now. Take them out. Take them out, Judge Dredd.
Pretty much. That's
Ready.
kind of how it's framed.
He's ready. But yeah, no, and yeah, again, like the writing for these guys where you're gonna be just crooked judges and you bad guys. Go. That was basically what the director told them.
It sure seems like it. I mean, that's all they did.
Yeah, it was kind of thrown in there. I mean, I didn't have a problem with it. I could see why other people would. Um, but yeah, yeah.
Okay, I have a feeling I'm gonna blow your mind. I thought he looked. As we've been talking, I just kind of looked this up real quick on IMDb. I I thought he looked familiar as I was watching the movie. Do you know who played that? They call him a paramedic named TJ in Dredd. Do you know who played that character?
Which one?
The guy who played him. The guy that they just shoot when the from the four
See,
judges come.
he's like a that guy to me. I've seen him in things. He's
I might have seen him in more than one, but he stuck out as one in particular, and it's another Carl Urban movie that we are doing one day on this podcast. I will guarantee it.
which one?
Doom.
Oh, was he?
He plays Destroyer in Doom. As soon as he came on screen, I was like, fuck, that looks like Destroyer. And yes, I'm one of the few people in the world who could probably say that because I've seen Doom enough times that I can recognize the secondary characters.
No.
What's that? You kind of cut out there for a second.
I said, that's a terrible movie. You want to talk about terrible movies?
You bite your tongue.
Terrible.
That first-person shooter, best Carl Urban scene ever.
Worst The Rock acting I've ever seen in a movie.
I won't disagree with that. Oh, no, you know what? Scorpion King, he's pretty bad.
No, it's
Yes.
way better. It's way better than him being a bad guy, zombie out of nowhere bullshit. I'm like, what is this?
That's The Mummy Returns. Scorpion
Wait.
King, he's not a zombie.
Oh, okay, yeah. No, I'm talking about his in Doom.
Oh, in Doom when he starts to turn. Dude, we got to do that movie.
Ugh.
It's
Ugh.
bad. It is bad in the best way.
There's a reason why I have to rewatch that movie. I
have like 3 really top guilty pleasure bad movies, and Doom is one of them.
Yeah.
And I don't know why. Because every time I watch it, I'm like, God, this is bad, but let's keep going.
Yeah, I just did not like The Rock in that movie at all.
I don't think The Rock liked The Rock in that movie.
I think I've only ever watched the movie once.
No, I've seen it many times. I saw it in theaters.
You poor child.
And I owned it and watched it many times.
You were that one guy
What one guy?
who watched it and liked it.
Yeah, probably.
It's okay. We all, have those movies that we are ready to defend that no one else will.
Oh, I know there's no defending it. I just still enjoy it.
Mm-hmm. I mean, you could defend it in your enjoyment of it, right? You got to defend the things that you enjoy out of it. Most people didn't, you know what I mean? Like it at all. I'd have to rewatch it. I'd have to rewatch it, honestly. I just remember I only watched it once, and I think it's because I didn't enjoy it at all.
It's batshit crazy.
Yeah, definitely. I'm down.
Yeah, we'll have to do that one in the future. That'll be a future episode. Yeah. So then, as we go into the final confrontation of this movie, we'll get back to Dredd now. After they've killed all the other judges and Anderson has escaped.
I love how she takes her bad guy out, but like, did the other judges not get any information on this chick?
It doesn't seem like it.
Yeah, because the corrupt female judge definitely went with the wrong strategy there.
Yeah. Well, she even says before she walks away from Lena Headey that what she's gonna do is she's like, either if I see her first, I'll kill her, or she sees me first and then she puts her gun down and then I'll kill her. Thinking because she's immediately like, well, she's new, she's a rookie. She's gonna see another judge and immediately be like, oh, they're friendly. I can let my guard down because they're just here to help me. But apparently they don't know the biggest, most important piece of information is that she can read your fucking mind.
Yeah. Yeah, pretty important detail that they should have known ahead of time.
And even that is done so anticlimactic because they just kind of start walking towards each other. Guns are both still drawn, which number one, even if you can't read minds, if the person who's there supposedly there to help you is still pointing a gun at you like 8 seconds after they've realized that you're friendly, there's something to worry about.
Mm-hmm.
And all she does is like they do some kind of color effect on the screen to basically tell you that she's reading her mind, and she just opens fire on her, and it's like, yep, that's it, that's all done, and just walks
Sure
past
did.
her body.
Sure did. Yeah. But, again, they had to speed through some things based on the time.
But what time? The movie's an hour and a half.
They had some judges to spare, so they killed one real quick.
Clearly, well, the other ones don't take that long. I mean, the one that he
No.
throw punches, the one that he throw punches is like a minute and a half scene, and then the other two is like I kept kind of laughing to myself, going, "This is like the raptor scene in the kitchen from Jurassic Park, but it's guys with guns."
Yeah, I'll take it.
And then Judge Dredd gets shot through a wall through his abdomen. And then this is where you also kind of hear that Dredd himself is kind of revered by the other judges, like almost like he's a legend. Because after the guy shoots him, he comes around the corner and Dredd says, "Wait." And he starts going off on this monologue. Like, what do you mean, wait? What are you talking about? Like, the great Judge Dredd wants me to wait to kill him because of what? And he's like, no. And then she shows up and shoots him from behind. He's like, I wanted you to wait for her to shoot you. I'm like, what? What the fuck kind of line is that? It could have been something as simple like, what are you waiting for? It could have been she shoots him, that, or I was waiting for that. Like, it could have been such a better way to write that line.
Yeah. I mean, that particular one, I guess, fell a little flat.
Yeah. And then they end up finding Mama. If you haven't been paying attention, that's Lena Headey's character. She has attached. It's basically a detonator to her wrist, and it's like into her veins or whatever you want to call it. And she basically says that the entire 200th floor, which is what they're on, is laced with enough explosives to drop the top 50 stories of this building. And at that point, the rest of the building would just crumble under the weight. And that it is tethered to her heart. And if her heartbeat stops, this will detonate. So she's basically like, well, you can't kill me now. And he takes this as almost like a challenge. Like, oh, really? And he shoots her and then decides to give her some of her own SLO-MO drug and basically says, let's see if that wristband or wrist, whatever you want to call it, can get through 200 stories of concrete, and just fucking throws her off the balcony the same way she did to the guys that they skinned.
Yeah.
But then you have to watch the whole fall in slow-mo. The whole thing.
That wasn't that long. It's not like it was 5 minutes.
It felt like. And then it's like she lands on the camera and you see just like blood from her face fill up the frame. I was like, this is being shot so horribly.
She got squished like a watermelon.
Do you ever just show that from the side? You don't have to do like a forced perspective of she's coming at you. And I get that it was shot in 3D.
Yeah. Yeah. That particular shot, yeah. I mean, sure. They could have just shown her just, I guess, in real time being squished. But yeah, it was The strange shot.
And I mean, I will say he's right that the wristband doesn't reach the detonator on their level. But I kind of wished it would have. Like, I was really hoping that that's how it was going to end. And it was going to be like, it's not going to reach. And then she hits the ground, and then you see this thing turn red, obviously, because her heart has stopped. And then they can't. Pardon?
Didn't have the budget for that.
Well, that's what I was hoping for, because then the camera goes up and just shows Dredd at the balcony, and I was hoping for just a massive explosion, and like behind him, and cut to black, movie over. But I'm sure they were hoping that they would get picked up for a sequel for this movie, so they couldn't kill off the character.
Yeah, and he's a character in the comic books. I don't think you want to kill off the character in the first movie out of respect. But yeah,
I guess he's not much of a. Like we say, he's not much of a character.
No,
he's a brooding helmet.
Exactly, he's a Punisher. Punisher's not really a character. He's just
the Punisher has a backstory.
True. And I don't know if Judge Dredd in the comic books does have a backstory. He might. They just didn't utilize it in this movie.
Which again is, if he doesn't have a backstory, then there's not much to deal with. But if he does have a backstory and they just blew it off, that's a real oversight that I don't think I could get past.
Yeah, I mean, some characters I feel like don't really need much of a backstory. Especially badass characters. There's a lot of badass characters in like westerns and shit that just here.
There's not true. They're just the town, like you say, the town badass who does what he wants type thing.
I guess it works in some cases. In some cases, it just doesn't work.
Yeah.
I thought it did. You just didn't think that it executed it that good.
And again, I think part of it is the part of the reason that I dislike the character is I think because I am such a big fan of Karl Urban, and you don't really even see him in you don't see him at all. You see his mouth. To which when I saw it, I was like, yeah, he could be Batman.
Yeah, that was his audition tape.
Pretty much.
I've been wanting him to be Batman for years. I always said he plays like the brooding guy pretty well, and he's got a good Batman voice.
I feel like that would be one of those things that they would have been like, he plays it too dark. And then fucking Matt Reeves made his newest Batman. It was like, no, he probably definitely could play Batman.
I think his Batman would have been like brutal. Like almost like not year 1, but like year maybe 3.
Yeah.
Where he's still still learning, but still pissed off.
Yeah, he hasn't let go of that anger yet.
Yeah. But he's not a total rookie where he's making mistakes.
Yeah. No, I completely agree with that. And then basically after that, they just the lockdown of the building is lifted, and I did kind of like the way it ended, where Anderson basically says to him, like, this isn't for me. I know that I failed, and I'm just not cut out to be a judge. Anyway, she kind of gives him her badge, and she just kind of walks off into the sunset, and then you see the chief go up to Dredd, and she basically just looks at her walk away and shows, so did she pass or did she fail? And he says she passed. And that's kind of all there is to the movie. So you see that there's a character arc for her, without a backstory.
No. Yeah, and I do like the character arc. I liked how she was really started off unsure of herself, didn't really believe that she could be a judge, and then once she gets kidnapped, or even before that when she's dealing with being hunted and trying to people trying to kill her. She's starting to believe in herself a little bit more. But it's right after she gets kidnapped and she escapes is when she it's turned on, and she's fully committed to being this a judge.
Well, yeah, at that point, it's life or death for her.
Yeah, and she starts fucking people up. And they give her own little montage, little shooting montage, which was pretty damn brutal.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I appreciated that.
No, I agree. I liked her character arc too. I thought she was pretty good throughout the whole movie. The one I will say, there is a character in the movie that I wasn't crazy on, and I think a lot of it is because I've seen how good he can be, and that was Donald Lowe, not Donald Lowe. Good lord, Domhnall Gleeson. His character was fucking weird, dude.
Yeah, I mean,
Like that was a tertiary, secondary comic book character played to a T, which I appreciate, but at the same time, to see it in live action on screen is like, maybe someone like you is better left to the pages of a comic book.
just tone down everything about the how they are portraying this character. Just tone it down a bit. I think it would have been better.
I mean, even just the amount of red around his eyes that the makeup department did. I was like, dude, you look like you've been high for 40 years and you're only 25 years old.
Yeah. It was yeah, it could have been, his character could have been less of so extra.
Yeah, now that was a character that I don't need a backstory for, because again, he's just one of Mama's cronies, henchmen type thing. And then it shows that he's basically nothing anyways, because at the very end, the minute he has the opportunity to turn on her just to basically get away with his own life and his own safety, he does it at the drop of a hat. So obviously throughout the movie, that character is looking out for only himself, and he's basically helping her just so that she doesn't kill him. And he does the same thing to get away. So his character doesn't really change. There's no real arc there. He's not a big enough character to have an arc. But I like that they kind of kept the way his character was written going forward through the whole movie and didn't really try to change that.
I agree.
But I don't think I really have much else to say about this movie. I don't know about it. If you got any notes or anything you'd want to bring up.
No, I pretty much said all the things I wanted to say.
Okay. So I think that will wrap us up on our discussion of 2012's Dredd. And if you want to, I'd like to ask you, what are your final thoughts and your rating, and would you recommend this movie to others? I mean, I know you already recommended it to me, but would you do it to other people as well?
I do. I believe this is one of the most underrated superhero movies out there. I think it suffers from its lack of budget and I guess creative or imaginative script, and given to the hands of a better script writer and director, it could have done a lot better. But I enjoyed it for what it was. My rating is, I'd say I'd give it I'm at like a 7.5.
Okay, so you're just above what the IMDb and the kind of the average of the audience score on Rotten Tomatoes.
Yeah.
Overall, myself, I don't think I would recommend this movie to people. Again, I found the majority of it kind of meandering and a little tedious and boring at times. I will say the action scenes that do happen I found enjoyable, but it was a lot to try and follow this movie with any kind of interest when there's no I don't want to say no real plot, but there's no depth to the plot. It's very surface level, and I get that there are other action movies, comedy movies, even some dramas that have a script this or a plot that this lean, but they do a better job at fleshing things out in the background, and they do a better job with character building or things like that. And I just don't think I think this movie missed the mark on all of those aspects. So I don't think I would recommend it personally. And if you want to see parts of this movie, I would look up the just the fight scenes on YouTube, because those are the cooler parts of this movie, and the parts that I would say you might get enjoyment out of watching. So for my rating, I'm I'm gonna give this a 5.
Ouch.
So yeah, that's kind of where I'm at with this. I don't know if I'll ever watch it again, and if I do, it's probably going to be several years down the road before I were to ever revisit this.
Yeah.
But that's, like I said, that's just kind of where I'm sitting at it. Um, so yeah, I think that's going to do it for us for this week, for this episode, and I'd like to remind everybody once again to follow us on our socials, which you can find us on X at geeked_podcast with a capital G. We are also on Instagram at geekedoutpod, and you can reach us by email at geekedoutpod@gmail.com. And we will be back next week, and we're going to have a special episode for you. We're going to do another top 5 list, and this one is going to be in honor of the Super Bowl, which is just a couple weeks from now. We're going to be doing our top 5 football movies, so I don't think you guys are going to want to miss that. And I'm sure our lists will. I'm sure there'll be a couple common ones, and I'm sure there might be a couple anomalies. But you guys are going to have to tune in to find out. So that being said, I'd like to thank you all for listening, and thank you all for subscribing. And have a good one, everybody.
Peace.